car, taken into the basement here, disassembled, and what we have in front of us is the D-drum assembly and all the parts that are involved in that assembly. This is the main culprit here. This is what they call the D-drum or the reverse drum. And this is the new one. And I have the old one right here. And you can see there are splines on the inside, and inside of the splines there's a little ridge. And in that ridge or groove sits a ring, a snap ring that holds in a set of clutch packs. Well, the problem is, due to poor quality metal and maybe poor design, that ridge where the O-ring sits snaps off. So you get chunks such as this that fall apart in the transmission. So in this case, got an updated piece. It's aftermarket, supposedly better aluminum, and the wall is a little bit thicker. So, and the basic design of this, you can see it's kind of a two-sided piece. Each side houses a piston, which I'll show you, and also has splines on not just the side that fails, but the non-failed side, and those also hold a set of clutch packs. So, got this main piece, aftermarket. Again, it's about 120 bucks on eBay. Not so bad. So, on each side of the drum, we've got a piston. It's a flat piston. Carries an O-ring on the outside and another O-ring on the inside bore. And then same thing on the back side. This is the rearward piston, O-ring, another O-ring in the middle. And again, this is the forward side here, the side that fails. And in addition to this edge snapping off this, we have this O-ring on the outside of this piston fails. Grab the old one here. You can see it just shreds in two. I found about 90% of it still in the transmission, or still on the piston. Other bits of it I found in the filter and in the pan and kind of in the guts in the transmission. So this O-ring's only available from ZF through the full kit, but I did some careful measuring and I found it to be a 2.5 millimeter cross section by 140 millimeter inside diameter. This is a Buna N nitrile rubber, and it seems to fit about perfect, so I'm going to go with it. So again, on each side of this we have a flat piston, and if you can see inside of the bore here, there's a little recess. In that recess there's a hole which corresponds to this hole, and same thing on the back side. There's another hole and another hole for fluid to come, and that pushes the pistons, which are going to sit inside, and that pushes them out. This unit, out of all the internal parts, this is the one that's bolted to the transmission. There's three threaded holes. It looks like they're about 10 millimeter bolts. They're pretty stout. So, we've got the pistons on each side. Each piston gets its own cup spring. And then on the inside, running through the middle is a sprag clutch assembly. And this is another piece with splines on the outside. It's got more splines on the inside of this sprag clutch, which made up with the splines on the inside of the drum itself. And then finally on each outer side of the drum we have a set of clutch packs. Same thing on the back. And then these two little rings snap into the sprag clutch here. And we're going to do those last because they might be damaged when we reassemble it all. So we're going to go ahead and reassemble it. I've cleaned everything as good as I could. Try to use lint-free rags. It's about impossible to get a clean room type environment, but do the best you can. So again, we'll start with the front piston. The side here with these three marks, those go on the inside. Same with the back piston too. Here, there's three marks. Those go inner. I'm going to use a little bit of transmission fluid to lubricate the O-ring. And then same thing on the inner bore here. The piston O-ring slides on this surface and then also on the inside of this surface here. So Alright, so we're going to place the piston, get it square, push it down gently, and you can see it seats in there. And I'll do the same thing on the back side. Okay, now that that piece is in there, it's time to set the cup spring in on the forward side, which is this side, and then after that we'll place the spread clutch assembly. So this spring cup or cup spring sits in here, and then we have this little spacer piece. It's going to sit in there also. And now we'll take the spread clutch assembly, and you can see the little teeth, the clutch assembly, and those are going to mate up with this outer surface here. So try to be careful with this, and you're going to want to rotate it as you install it, and you can see it sits pretty much flush with here. Now what we need to do is place spread clutch assembly through the center bore, and we need to meet these splines up with the splines on the back side. It's a pretty tight fit though, so. And there's also a couple of O-rings which are going to be compressed. So we'll lube those up. And same thing on the inner bore where the O-rings sit. Alright, now this is a little tough to line these teeth up. It's a very, very tight fit, so try to be as careful as you can, and I'm actually going to use a couple wood blocks of spacers here. And I found it's easiest sometimes if you pull from the inside and twist and rotate to engage the splines there, but in this case it just dropped right in, so that was pretty easy. So you know it's fully seated when you can see the splines of the spread clutch basically flush with this surface in here. You'll know it when it seats. It makes a nice metallic clunk. Alright, so now that that's seated, just carefully put it down, and install a cup spring on the back side with a little spacing washer. And then the last thing that needs to be done is install this snap ring. Unfortunately you can't just put it right in there because the cup springs need to be compressed, so we're gonna come up with a little compression tool and get this snap ring in there, and we'll just use the normal snap ring pliers to get it seated in there. And this is where these two little gaskets, they're kind of O-rings but they're not, they're square, they're got a little gap in there. We'll take those off first because they sit in two grooves right in here, and we don't want to damage them when we put the spring clip back on there. So alright, so now we've just installed the snap ring, which compresses the cup springs and basically holds the spread clutch in place. This right here is the snap ring, and you can see the little groove that it sat in right there. Just used a standard pair of snap ring pliers. They're not perfect because the snap ring pliers have a rounded tip, and these are just flat, but they'll work if you play with it. So here's what I rigged up. It's a just a piece of 1/2 inch 20 all thread, little plumbing end cap that I used to install some subframe bushings a while ago, a saw blade with tape over the edges, and then in there these are 4 sockets that we use to compress this little spacer in there. This guy right there, use that to compress the spacer, which opens up that groove so you can put the snap ring in there. And it's a tight little fit, but it'll work if you play with it. It's going to take some cursing and a lot of hassle to do it, but after a few tries you'll be able to do it. On the back side of this tool, there's just another pipe cap just like that sits in and clamps the whole thing together. Alright, so here's a little better view of the tool I used. Piece of all-thread pipe cap on the end, and this sat against this face of the sprag clutch. One thing to note is there's what appears to be brass or bronze bushing surface on the inside. You don't want to nick that, so cover the all-thread with tape. And I also stuck some shop towels in the middle too to also help center the piece of all-thread and protect it. So once it's all together, you just want to make sure that the sprag clutch works smoothly. Doesn't bind. It will spin pretty smoothly without any noise, and the clutch is actually working there. So that's the back side we didn't see, and now here's the finished side with the snap ring installed, ready to put our clutch packs in. So. And then one thing we can do, these two little rings I showed before, they're going to go in grooves on the same side that we installed that snap ring. Just wipe them down carefully, and you can see they are a two-piece design with a little notch on each side, and those notches match up. So install one, make sure it sits nice, and then the second one, same thing there. So now that that's together, one last step, which is pretty easy, and that's just the clutch packs. So we're going to start on the forward side here. In this case, we have to install the clutch packs not only on the outer splines of the D drum, but also on the inner splines of the sprag clutch assembly here. So here's a clutch pack. Once you take it apart, don't flip pieces around, and just so you don't get things screwed up. But just so you know, they alternate pieces of friction material. These are steel, and this is friction material, and they alternate. This thick ring goes on the outside, and then that's held in with this retaining ring, and this is the one that comes loose once this lip breaks on the original one. So pretty simple to put it back. We'll just flip them backwards how we put them in, or how we took them out. So there's two metal rings that go in first, and now we hit some friction material. That lines up with the sprag, metal, friction, and so on. You'll also want to inspect the friction material, and this is taken apart just to see it's not too worn. You can see little ridges, which shows there's a little bit of friction material left, and these ones all look good. So now we've come down to this last big thick ring, which we said goes on the outside. And it's held in place with just this single snap ring, which fits in the groove. Gently pry it in. There we go. Snap ring's fully seated in the ring, and we're good to go. Just do the same thing on the other side, and then it's back to be ready to be reassembled with the rest of the transmission.